Mom and I, two people, myself and my mom, were fishing at Block Canyon, and there was a funny noise in the engine compartment. I looked and saw a lot of water. When I saw the life raft, I did not see my mom. Have you found her?
That voice belongs to 22-year-old Nathan Carman, recorded after he was found drifting 100 miles south of Martha's Vineyard. After more than a week lost at sea, you might expect panic or weakness, yet his voice sounds steady, clear, and unsettlingly calm.
I would just like to thank the public for their prayers and for their concern for both my mother and for myself. And I would like to thank the crew of the ship that rescued me.
And yet, at this point, there was still no sign of Nathan's mother, Linda. In his 26-year career with the U.S. Coast Guard, investigator Eric Gemp had never seen anything like it. Survivors lost at sea for more than a week don't typically climb rescue ladders with ease. They don't speak in complete sentences. They don't look well. What the Coast Guard didn't know yet was that Linda's disappearance wasn't the first tragedy to strike the Carman family. 3 years earlier, her father, wealthy real estate developer John Chakalos, had been shot to death in his bed. And Nathan Carman, he was the last person to see both of them alive.
Early Friday morning in Windsor, Connecticut, 87-year-old John Chakalos was found dead from an apparent gunshot wound to the head. Investigators are calling it a homicide.
Before we continue, we extend our sincere condolences and prayers to everyone affected by this case. We approach this story with respect and care. John Chakalos was born in 1926 to Greek immigrant parents who settled in New Hampshire, then moved their family to Middletown, Connecticut. He was the only son among 5 sisters, Vivian, Helen, Vasiliki, Julia, and Georgia, who adored him. After serving in World War II, John built his fortune the old-fashioned way, through relentless work. He developed nursing homes and extended care facilities across New England, naming many after his 4 daughters, Elaine, Linda, Charlene, and Valerie. There was Linda Manor in Leeds, Massachusetts, Charlene Manor in Greenfield, properties that carried their names and secured their futures. By 2013, John's estate was valued at $42 million. He and his wife Rita raised their daughters in Middletown, but John's pride and joy was a 15,000 square foot mansion on 88 acres in West Chesterfield, New Hampshire. Every December, the family opened the gates to the public for an elaborate Christmas light display, collecting food donations for local pantries. It was a generous gesture from a generous man, but generosity, as investigators would later learn, doesn't always protect you from those closest to you. On November 21st, 2013, Rita Chakalos died after a long battle with cancer. She and John had been married for nearly 59 years. The family was devastated. John's daughters began planning his life without their mother, encouraging him to stay in Connecticut rather than alone in New Hampshire, looking at apartments where he'd be closer to family. But John never made it to those apartments. On December 20th, 2013, at 8:30 in the morning, Elaine Chakalos arrived at her father's modest single-story home on Overlook Drive in Windsor, Connecticut. It was a far cry from the New Hampshire mansion, no indoor pool, no sprawling acreage. Just a quiet place where her 87-year-old father had been spending time since Rita's death. When he didn't answer the door, Elaine let herself in. What she found in his bedroom would haunt her forever. John Chakalos had been shot multiple times in the head while he slept. There were no signs of forced entry. Nothing was stolen, not the cash kept in the house, not the valuables displayed throughout. So, investigators ruled out burglary immediately. Windsor Police Captain Thomas Lepore later described it as a heinous crime, driven by personal motive, not opportunity. And guess what? The last person to see John Chakalos alive was his then 20-year-old grandson, Nathan Carman.
Next to this photo of 87-year-old John Chocolos, the promise of a $250,000 reward for information leading to an arrest and conviction of his killer.
Nathan Carman was born January 21, 1994, the only child of Linda Chocolos and Clark Carman. His parents divorced when he was 10, and Nathan primarily lived with his mother in Middletown, Connecticut. At age 4 or 5, Nathan was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, what was previously called Asperger's syndrome. According to his father, Clark, Nathan was highly intelligent but struggled socially. He kept to himself, got along better with adults than children his own age, and found comfort in structure and routine. As Nathan grew older, the challenges intensified. When he was a child, he once held another child hostage with a knife. Later, as a teenager, his behavioral issues escalated even further. In 2010, shortly before Christmas, Nathan's beloved horse cruise, a gift from his grandfather, died from colic. The loss devastated him. Nathan stopped speaking to his mother almost entirely, choosing to communicate only with one person, John Chocolos. This created a rift in the family. Linda believed her father was manipulating Nathan, pulling him away from her in the same controlling way John had always operated. Their relationship had long been complicated. John loved his daughters but ruled them with expectations and financial strings. On the other hand, Linda had her own struggles. As it turns out, she had a gambling problem. At one point, she even assaulted her father when he threatened to cut off her financial support, though charges were later dropped. But through it all, John never stopped providing for her, and he absolutely doted on Nathan. Between 2012 and 2013, John transferred approximately $550,000 into bank accounts for Nathan. He bought him gifts, took him on trips, and made him feel valued in ways Nathan rarely felt elsewhere. But there was something investigators found deeply troubling. In the weeks before John's murder, Nathan had sent an email to his grandfather's trusts and estate's attorney. The message asked specific questions about inheritance, what Nathan would receive, and in what order family members would need to die for him to inherit. On the evening of December 19, 2013, Nathan had dinner with his grandfather at the Windsor home. According to Nathan, he left around 8:30 p.m. to meet his mother Linda for an early morning fishing trip scheduled for 3 a.m. But Nathan never showed up for that fishing trip, and sometime during the night, around 2 a.m., a neighbor heard what sounded like gunshots coming from John's home. When police questioned Nathan about his whereabouts, his story kept shifting. He claimed he got lost, disoriented, couldn't remember exactly where he'd been during the critical hours between leaving his grandfather and when he was supposed to meet Linda. Then investigators discovered something even more damning. Nathan had recently purchased a Sig Sauer 7.16 patrol rifle, a .308 caliber weapon. The bullets that killed John Chocolos matched that caliber exactly. When police asked Nathan about the gun, he said he'd lost it. Take note, Nathan was known for his love of guns. For someone who loved firearms and kept meticulous records, disappearing them entirely when his grandfather was murdered seemed incredibly convenient. Investigators also found that Nathan's computer hard drive was missing. So was the GPS unit from his truck. Both had been discarded the night of the murder, devices that could have shown exactly where Nathan had been and what he'd been searching online. But without the murder weapon, without physical evidence placing Nathan at the scene, prosecutors couldn't move forward. In 2014, Windsor police sought an arrest warrant. A judge refused to sign it. The case went cold. John Chocolos' murder remained unsolved, but not forgotten. After his grandfather's death, Nathan inherited approximately $550,000. He moved to Vermont, purchased property, and largely remained unemployed. By 2016, the money was gone. However, Nathan's relationship with his mother Linda had improved somewhat since John's death. They traveled together occasionally, went fishing, made efforts to repair the damage from years of tension, Linda was trying to rebuild her own life too. She'd divorced Nathan's father, Clark, years earlier, worked various jobs, and maintained close relationships with her three sisters, Elaine, Charlene, and Valerie. In late 2015, Nathan purchased a 31-foot aluminum fishing boat. He named it the Chicken Pox. The boat had been in excellent condition when Nathan bought it from a man named Brian Woods. A marine surveyor inspected it in December 2015 and declared it seaworthy. But in the months that followed, Nathan made modifications. He removed 2 forward bulkheads, structural supports that contributed to the hull's integrity. He removed the trim tabs from the transom, opening 4 half-dollar-sized holes in the hull just above the waterline. To seal those holes, Nathan used paper towels and epoxy putty. He did this work himself without professional guidance, approximately 6 hours before taking the boat out with his mother. He also replaced the port bilge pump the day before the trip, but never tested it. Marine experts would later testify that these modifications made the Chicken Pox unseaworthy. That heading into open ocean with improperly sealed holes and questionable pumps was not just reckless, it was a death wish. On September 17, 2016, shortly after 3 o'clock in the morning, Nathan and Linda Carman arrived at Ram Point Marina in Wakefield, Rhode Island, in separate vehicles. Linda arrived first. Nathan drove up minutes later, a cooler of bait visible in the bed of his pickup truck. Oddly, he never brought the bait onto the boat. Linda had told friends they were heading to Block Island, a relatively safe, close-to-shore fishing spot about 12 miles from the mainland. She would only fish there. She'd repeatedly refused Nathan's request to go to Block Canyon, a deep underwater trench much farther offshore. It was dangerous, she said. She would only go there with an experienced captain. Nathan was not an experienced captain. The Chicken Pox left the marina around 3:30 a.m. According to Nathan, they did fish near Block Island for a couple of hours. Then, contrary to what Linda had told friends, they headed to Block Canyon. By the afternoon of September 18, Linda's friend began to worry. Linda had specifically said to call the Coast Guard if she didn't hear from her by a certain time. At 10 a.m. on September 18, the friend made that call.
The search for a missing Connecticut family covers the area from Point Judith, Rhode Island, all the way to south of Long Island.
That mother and son have not been heard from since.
10:54 was the last one. Leaving dock shortly. Be in contact by 9 a.m. Hope you're having a good weekend. Could have, had motor problems. I don't know.
If you see that boat, the Chicken Pox, or any sign of Linda or Nathan, call the Coast Guard.
The U.S. Coast Guard launched a massive search and rescue operation covering 62,000 nautical square miles. Helicopters, planes, cutters, everything available. But no distress call had been made from the Chicken Pox. No emergency beacon had been activated. Both systems had been tested and confirmed working before the trip. For 5 days, crews scanned the ocean. They found nothing.
From the air,
you got this boat at 10 o'clock.
To the sea.
There's another aircraft and 2 cutters that are also out today.
The search is expansive, looking for that 32-foot aluminum boat that Linda Carman and her 22-year-old son, Nathan, were believed to go fishing in late Saturday night. Covering an area from Montauk, New York to Martha's Vineyard. This stretch taking 4 hours. It's 7 legs just going back and forth, scanning the ocean. The crew releasing a capsule to record water conditions, winds, and tide, to try and help narrow down where a disabled boat might float to.
On September 23rd, the official search was called off. 2 days later, the Orient Lucky, a Chinese cargo freighter bound for Boston, spotted something in the water, a life raft, and a man waving frantically. Nathan Carman was pulled aboard, the crew was struck by his condition. He looked well. In fact, he was so hydrated that he was strong enough to climb the ladder without assistance. For someone who claimed to have been adrift for 8 days with limited food and water, he seemed remarkably unaffected. Coast Guard officials brought Nathan to Boston. Immediately, he gave interviews to news cameras.
Hello, this is Nathan Carman.
Nathan, this is United States Coast Guard Boston. I need to understand what happened.
Mom and I, 2 people, myself and my mom, were fishing at Block Canyon, and there was a funny noise in the engine compartment. I looked and saw a lot of water. So I had my mom bring in the reel. I brought the safety stuff forward. When I saw the life raft, I did not see my mom. Have you found her?
No, we haven't been able to find her yet.
So I got to the life raft after I got my bearings, and I was whistling and calling and looking around, and I didn't see her.
As you can see, his tone was measured, calm, almost scripted.
It must have been terrifying.
Yes.
Finally, after 8 days, Nathan was rescued. Before he was back on dry land, deputies in Vermont seizing items from his home. A search warrant revealing he's under investigation for reckless endangerment, resulting in death.
There's some concern that the boat was not seaworthy. Was it?
I believed it was when we left the dock. I would not have left the dock. I would not have taken my mom out fishing with me had I not believed the boat was seaworthy. I feel healthy. Emotionally, I've been through a huge amount.
He's lost a little weight, but other than that, he's doing well.
But when investigators started asking questions, the story began to fall apart.
Desperately that my mom was rescued. I hope that she will be found. As difficult as this is, I'm glad that family and friends had a chance, and that friends came together to remember my mom, to support each other in this very difficult time.
Can you tell us about your relationship with her?
Now I'm going to drive off.
And what about your grandfather? We're approaching this. Okay.
Nathan told the Coast Guard that sometime during the morning of September 18th, he heard a funny noise from the engine compartment. When he checked below deck, he saw water, lots of it rising fast. He claimed he asked Linda to bring in the fishing lines to keep her occupied while he gathered emergency gear. The boat, he said, sank in approximately 4 minutes. He grabbed a bag of safety equipment and swam to the life raft. When he turned around, Linda was gone. He didn't hear her scream, didn't see her in the water. She just vanished, according to him. But investigators found that timeline impossible. First, the boat wasn't that small. At 31 feet, there was nowhere Linda could have disappeared to without Nathan noticing, especially in calm weather conditions. Second, Nathan said he whistled and shouted for his mother after getting into the raft. He looked for her until dark, yet he never mentioned her wearing a life vest, despite having time to grab emergency gear himself. Third, currents in the area should have carried the raft westward. Instead, Nathan was found miles to the east, in a completely different direction. Fourth, a lobsterman named Alex Alcorn had been fishing near Block Canyon that same day, within miles of where Nathan claimed the chicken pox went down. Alcorn never saw a sinking boat, never saw a life raft, never saw anyone in distress. And then there was the matter of the boat modifications. Forensic experts hired by insurance investigators concluded that Nathan's repairs were not just inadequate, they were designed to fail. Removing trim tabs and sealing holes with putty and paper towels 6 hours before an offshore voyage. That wasn't carelessness, that was sabotage. Now, 2 weeks after his rescue, Nathan filed an $85,000 insurance claim for the loss of the chicken pox.
This trial is focused solely on the insurance policy on Carman's boat.
Nathan Carman unexpectedly breaking his silence in his civil trial against the insurance company for his boat, the Chicken Pox, which is believed to have sunk somewhere off the New England coast in September of 2016, with his mother on board.
This isn't about money. It's an $85,000 claim. It's a contingency fee. I get a fraction of that if I win. I've put lots of time, effort, and frankly a lot of misery into this. I almost feel like I have a responsibility to my mom to make sure that the truth comes out. And Mr. Farrell and the insurers, Boat US, Berkshire Hathaway, National Fire and Liability, have made claims against me that are so tremendous, I don't feel like I can walk away from them.
Attorneys for Boat US argue that Carman had altered his boat, the Chicken Pox, making it unseaworthy and didn't notify them about the changes. That, they argue, makes them exempt from paying the claim. But Carman's attorney said in closing arguments the 43-year-old boat had problems well before Carman purchased it, putting some of the blame on the previous owner, Brian Wood.
Now this had to be his most foolish move. Fortunately, when he filed the claim, the insurance companies, Boat US and National Liability and Fire Insurance, investigated. When they reviewed Nathan's modifications, his inconsistent timeline, and his mother's disappearance, they denied the claim entirely. They accused Nathan of intentionally sinking the boat. In 2019, the case went to civil trial. Nathan took the stand in his own defense. He insisted the boat was seaworthy, that the modifications were reasonable, and that he had tried to save his mother but couldn't find her in time. The judge didn't buy it. On August 23, 2019, U.S. District Court Judge John J. McConnell ruled that Nathan's faulty repairs had caused the Chicken Pox to sink. The insurance companies were not required to pay. But that ruling meant something else too. If Nathan's actions caused the boat to sink and Linda died as a result, he could be held criminally responsible. Meanwhile, Linda's three sisters, Elaine, Charlene, and Valerie, filed a civil lawsuit in New Hampshire probate court. They alleged that Nathan had murdered both John Chakalos and Linda Carman as part of a scheme to inherit the family fortune. If Linda was declared dead, Nathan stood to inherit approximately $7 million. The sisters were determined to make sure that never happened.
What you would ultimately be asked to decide at trial is whether or not I murdered my grandfather. And my grandfather's death is an event that occurred in December of 2013. Petitioners are asking about modifications that I made to my boat in September of 2016. Are we trying two murder cases here, or are we trying one? And if we're trying two murder cases, if we're saying that the issues at trial are not just did Nathan kill his grandfather or did he not, but also did Nathan kill his mother or did he not, do we not first need to figure out legally whether or not my mom is considered to be deceased, what's the manner of death, and then by what standard of proof are we trying to determine if my mom, it's difficult for me to repeat the allegation, but if I killed my mom or not. And how does that relate, like even if you did conclude that I killed my mom, how would that relate to your conclusion as to whether or not I killed my grandfather years earlier? It's just, to me, petitioner's argument that the disappearance of my mother relates to their allegations that I killed my grandfather is incoherent.
That didn't really stick, more than any police investigation stuck.
My concern, it's not the money, it's not so much even my freedom as it is my reputation and seeing that I have a future.
For years, the criminal investigation moved slowly. Federal authorities, Connecticut State Police, the FBI, and Windsor Police, cold case detectives reviewed every piece of evidence. They re-interviewed witnesses. They tracked down new leads. And on May 10, 2022, nearly 6 years after Linda disappeared, federal prosecutors unsealed a 9-count indictment against Nathan Carman. The charges: first-degree murder on the high seas, mail fraud, wire fraud. According to the indictment, Nathan had devised a multi-year scheme to defraud the Chakalos estate. The document alleged that on December 20, 2013, Nathan shot his grandfather, John Chakalos, twice with the Sig Sauer rifle, while John slept in his Windsor home. After the murder, Nathan discarded his computer hard drive and GPS to cover his tracks. Then, after depleting the $550,000 inheritance from John's death, Nathan planned his mother's murder. Prosecutors alleged that he deliberately modified the chicken pox to ensure it would sink. He lured Linda onto the boat under the pretense of a fishing trip, took her far offshore to Block Canyon despite her objections, and killed her before sinking the vessel. The indictment was detailed, methodical. It painted a picture not of impulsive violence, but of cold calculations spanning years. Nathan pleaded not guilty to all charges. His attorney argued that the case was circumstantial, that Nathan's autism contributed to behaviors investigators misunderstood, and that the government had no physical evidence directly linking Nathan to either death. Clark Carman, Nathan's father, publicly defended his son. The trial was set for October 2023 in Rutland, Vermont. Nathan remained in custody at the Cheshire County Jail in Keene, New Hampshire. According to his attorneys, he was preparing his defense, confident he would be vindicated. But Nathan Carman never made it to trial.
One of 29-year-old Nathan Carman's attorneys got the call this morning notifying him of his client's death. Carman was found dead in his New Hampshire prison cell early this morning. Prison officials say he was the only one in his cell at the time he was found. His lawyer says he just spoke with Carman Wednesday night. Manila had worked closely with Carman to build this case, and together they formed a bond.
It was an education because I had known nothing about this case till I got involved.
On June 15, 2023, 2:20 in the morning, a corrections officer at the Cheshire County Jail was making routine rounds when he checked cell D-204. Nathan Carman, 29 years old, was found unresponsive and not breathing. Staff and first responders performed CPR for 40 minutes. An AED was used. Every effort was made. Nathan was pronounced dead at 3:18 in the morning. Authorities confirmed the death was not suspicious. Nathan had died by suicide. He left behind a note for his attorneys, though its contents have never been publicly released. Defense attorney David Sullivan expressed shock. He was upbeat up until that point, Sullivan told reporters. "We were ready to go to trial. We were confident we were going to win. It's just a tragedy." Clark Carman, Nathan's father, echoed that sentiment in the Netflix documentary The Carman Family Deaths. "We were ready to go to trial, and you get a call to find out that your son just died." With Nathan's death, the murder charges were dismissed. The fraud charges were dropped. The criminal case was closed. Linda Carman was officially declared dead in September 2023, 7 years after she disappeared. Her body has never been recovered. Neither has the chicken pox. John Chakalos's murder remains officially unsolved. The $250,000 reward for information leading to an arrest has never been claimed. The Chakalos family fortune, tens of millions of dollars, remains tied up in probate court as Linda's sisters and various trusts work through the legal aftermath. The story of the Carman family raises questions that may never be answered. Was Nathan Carman responsible for the deaths of his grandfather and mother? Prosecutors believed they had enough evidence to prove it. His defense team believed they could create reasonable doubt. Or was Nathan, as his father insists, a misunderstood young man on the autism spectrum whose behaviors were misinterpreted by investigators determined to close 2 high-profile cases? Sadly, cases where children kill their parents for insurance money are not limited to the Carman family. As heartbreaking as this case is, another crime with shockingly similar motives happened in the Guy family home. one so brutal and so hard to understand that it left everyone stunned. If you like the way we create these videos and you want to help bring more cases like this to light, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives. Thank you once again for watching.